Awesome. Looks like we're live. Thank you everybody for joining and welcome to our newest community webinar. I am Derek. I'm a developer advocate here at InterSystems. So that means I get the privilege of being the host, which is always very fun. I will not be the star of the show though, so don't worry. In case you are not already familiar, these community webinars are part of our Global Masters program. If you're seeing folks on the screen right now who are not me, that means that they are stellar, top-of-the-line community members, and they're going to show you something really, really cool. So stay tuned. We are doing this in partnership with George James Software. I'm going to intro some folks real quick, and then we're just going to kick things off, and we're going to get a look at the Deltanji source control software. So on the call with me right now are Laurel, John, and George. Welcome, folks. You want to do a quick intro of yourselves, and then I will fade into the background.
Cool. I'm Laurel. I'm the Marketing and Business Development Manager at George James Software.
I'm John. I'm a Senior Product Engineer.
I'm George, CEO of George James Software.
Awesome. Yeah, welcome, folks. Thank you, everybody, for joining live. Yeah, Laurel, if you want to kick it off, I'll go ahead and let you take the reins.
Cool. Great. George, do you want to thank you, Derek? George, do you want to share the presentation? And yeah. Cool. Great. So yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you, Derek, for the introduction. And we're here to show you Deltanji source control. George is going to be leading the demo, and then John will be answering your questions at the end. So if you do have any questions during the session, feel free to just pop them in the chat. There's a little chat box at the bottom right of your screen. If you put them in there, and we'll come to them at the end. So yeah, I will hand over to George, who'll be taking you through the demo.
Thank you, Laurel. I'm going to give you a demonstration of Deltanji source control. I'm going to prefix that with a very brief overview just to give you some orientation about what the product is all about. Yeah, thank you all for coming and listening to this, and I hope you find it interesting and useful. So let's kick off Deltanji source control. What is it? It's source control, version control, and source management. It keeps a track of all of your source code and other artifacts that you want to manage in a versioned manner. It promotes collaboration and teamwork by providing the ability to work in different sandboxes and to branch and merge your code as and when you need to, as you're doing development work. It provides the ability to augment your quality assurance by giving you a full audit trail of everything that ever happened to your source code, including any over and above all the changes. It keeps a track of where those changes have been deployed. So it gives full, comprehensive audit logs. And finally, it's very tightly integrated with InterSystems IRIS, which makes it a very low friction environment for developers and ensures that they're able to do the right thing at the right time with respect to source control. No fiddling around at the command line or anything like that. It's all easy to use, drag and drop graphical interface. Makes it a pleasure to work with. So let's just look at the high-level architecture of Deltanji. You'll see in the center that's the heart of Deltanji, which is primarily a repository. This can either be a native Git repository or a native Deltanji repository. You can choose which you want to use, that is then wrapped around with a workflow mechanism that allows you to define how you want your code to pass through your organization's various steps and procedures, and gets your code from your sandbox to ultimately to the production live environment. So you'll see that at the top there are the various client integrations. These are the tools that you use to do work within the InterSystems environment, and these all integrate. These are all integrated with Deltanji to provide us a smooth and friction-free experience. Below the line, you'll see that there are various different kinds of components that are the things that Deltanji can operate on. Over on the left is the files, which is, if you're using something like Git, then that's the kind of thing that it expects to manage. But within an IRIS environment, there are all these other things that are often things you want to manage. During the demo, what I'm going to be showing you is 3 different use cases here. I'm going to be showing you VS Code, using VS Code to edit a class, an object script class. I'm going to be showing you use of the InterSystems production portal to edit some production configuration items. And I'm going to show you the Deltanji portal itself, managing some data, some arbitrary data that is just in a global. So those are the 3 things that we're going to be demonstrating, the 3 different scenarios. And those are all wrapped up as part of a change that I'm going to make to an IRIS interoperability production. That's what I'll be demoing. As part of that demo, we'll see the Deltanji workflow in operation, and this is a diagram that represents a typical workflow, and it's the one that we're using for this demo. In reality, your workflow can be simpler than this, or it can be much more complex. Some of our customers have very sophisticated workflows that meet quite exacting needs for very large teams. But this is sort of something that would be typical for a 10-man team or something. Just to kind of walk you through what this diagram represents, you'll see over on the left-hand side you've got the repository, and below that there are a series of developer sandboxes, which is the namespaces where developers will work. We'll be focusing on sandbox 1, what you'll see some branch and commit operations where branches are taken from the repository. We'll make changes to code and so on in the sandbox, and then we'll commit them back into the repository. At that point, they'll get pushed upstream to GitHub, and we'll show you what that looks like. And then the horizontal part of the workflow kicks in. When something is committed, it gets pushed into the ready for testing queue. And then from there, a QA person, somebody with a testing role, can pull items from the ready for testing queue, drop them into another namespace on a different server where the code will be tested. And then depending on whether the code passes or fails testing, then it will either, the QA person can then either promote it to staging, ready for deployment, or fail it back for rework back to one of the sandboxes. Once it's reached staging, then there's a final step, which is to deploy it into production. And so that box on the right-hand side represents the live namespace on the production server. So that's our workflow. We'll be revisiting this as we work through the demo. And so without any more talking, we'll get on with the demo. We'll start by looking at the production system. So this is our live system here, and and this is a production configuration in here. This is an actively running production, and if we just click on this guy, you'll see that we have a router process here with a series of services that feed into it. And what we're going to do is with these services is we're going to as a change basically to push through through Deltanji, we're going to make a change to the service so that it has some extra properties on this configuration panel. Basically a separate support panel that shows support information about each webhook service. WHS stands for webhook service, if you're a bit puzzled. And then the second three letters are just locations: London, Luxembourg, LAX, New York City, and so on. So the first thing that we're going to do, the class on which these services are based is called the Telegram webhook service. So we're going to locate that with VS Code, and then we're going to start making some changes within there. So I'll just switch over to VS Code, and you'll see in here that we have 3 sandboxes configured. So these are actually on 3 completely separate servers, but we're just going to be working in sandbox 1 today. So I drill down and look at this and identify the Telegram package. And here's the class that implements the webhook service. So we're going to go and make some changes to that. Now you'll notice that the moment that I opened this file, Deltanji kicked in and says that it's established a connection and it's giving me a status update on this class, and it says it's not checked out. So at this point, I'm unable to make any changes, but if I want to make a change to this class, I can simply right-click, select checkout, and enter in a justification for why I'm changing this class. So I'll just put add a support section to config panel, something like that. Okay. So it's now created a JIRA ticket with that identifier, and it's branched this class Telegraph Webhook Service.cls into sandbox 1. So I'm now ready to go. That's all that I need to do as a developer to get going with the change. So the change I'm going to make is I'm going to add a couple of properties. So this is a Boolean property called supported, which will appear on the screen as a yes/no checkbox. And I'm going to give it an initial value of 0, which will mean unchecked. So we're going to add that property, and we're going to add another property, which is support email. And this will just be a string. So that'll be the email address that people can use to contact the provider of the webhook service or the support team for the webhook service if they need to. So this is a persistent class, so those properties will get persisted in the database, but to get them to appear on the configuration screen, we need to add them to this settings string. So we'll just add them here. So I'll put in supported, and I'll create a new section called support. So that will appear as in a section named support in the panel, and then supported email, and also in the support section. Okay, I've got a space in supported email, support email it should be. Support email, and there should be a space in here, and I'll need to put that in quotes. That looks good. So just to recap, we've added 2 properties, and then we've added this bit to the setting string, which is basically a definition of what to render on the screen when we get to it. So now if we save that, that looks good. And now go back to our, let's go over to our sandbox and go and look at the production portal in our sandbox. The changes aren't in production in the live system yet because we have not deployed these changes yet, but they should be in our development sandbox. So this is sandbox 1, and this is on our development system. So let's go and pick one of these guys, and there we are. We've got the support section, and we've got our 2 new fields in there. Now at this point, these fields are read-only. We can't change them because this production is under source control, and it's not editable unless it's also branched from the repository. So let's pick one of these, and what we'll do. So one of the things that Deltanji does with productions is it allows you to manage each of the configuration items independently of all the others. The default implementation of productions in IRIS is that it's a monolithic, everything's deployed inside a single class definition. But that doesn't really work very well for large productions that have got thousands of configuration items. So with Deltanji, you can pick just the ones that you want to change and change them independently of each other. And to do that, here we'll see that we have a Deltanji button in the management portal here, in the production configuration portal, sorry. So I click on that, and it will tell me that I'm adding this item to a branch, and I can specify here the JIRA ticket that I created earlier, and that will then highlight that in a different color and make these settings editable. So I can now click supported in there, and I can put in a support email, something like support@georgejames.com. So I should apply that. So that's applied the changes. So now we're ready to, we're finished with our change. We're ready to check it in and deploy it or push it through the workflow to testing and so on. So if we go over to the Deltanji portal, we can do some of these operations from Deltanji. So what I'm going to do is, what you've got in here is a view on the left-hand side in the workflow folder here of all the places that are being managed by Deltanji. So you recognize some of these from the diagram that we were looking at earlier. So if we click on Sandbox 1 and look at the change requests subfolder in there, then you'll see that, as expected, this is the ticket that we've been working on. And if you drill down into it, then you can see that there are two items that we've changed in here. One is the Telegram webhook service itself, and the other is the configuration item that we modified to see if it was working properly. So let's go ahead and check this change in and commit it to the repository. So I can do this simply by dragging and dropping it into the repository master. And nothing happens. I don't know what went wrong there. Something has timed out, or maybe I misclicked. Okay, so we say commit from Sandbox into the repository master, and that has now committed our change to the repository and pushed it into a ready for testing state. So if we go and look in our ready for testing folder, we'll see that our JIRA ticket has turned up there. You'll see that there's a couple of other changes already queued up in this folder ready for testing in this queue. But we'll jump the queue and we'll get these tested first. But before I do that, I just want to go over and show you I've got a GitHub window open here. And if I refresh this screen, then you'll see that our change, and in fact, if we click on the commits, that's a better view. We'll see that our change has appeared already in GitHub, so that was appeared in there. And if we drill in on there, then we can see a typical GitHub diff listing of the changes that were made. So those are the changes that we've made, and those are preserved in GitHub and published to anybody that is interested in viewing them from GitHub. So over in our workflow, and if we go back to here, you'll now see that we've done work in the sandbox. We committed it into the repository, and the items we changed are now in a ready for testing state. So back on Deltanji, we can pick the branch that we created and promote it to test by simply clicking on the test button. So that's pushing those changes into the QA server. So let's go and look on the QA server, and we'll log in here. And just refresh that. And if we go and look at our webhook service, we'll see that those properties have been populated in there. So we've both got the underlying webhook service class and the changes to the settings there. If we go and look at other webhook service, other services in here, you'll see that they have the supported fields, but they're not valued because we haven't made any changes to those. Okay, so that's our test has passed. So we're happy that the change we made has come through as intended. So we can now go back to Deltanji, and within the in test folder, you'll see that this ticket is in here. There's one other test going on in the test environment at the moment. That's a change that was made by Alice, but it's something to do with configuring users. It doesn't conflict with the change that we've made, so that's not going to affect our testing. We're happy about that. So here I can simply say that we're going to pass that test. And so what's happening here is that it's pushing the change into into the staging environment, and at the same time it was propagating the changes into all of the other sandboxes that we have configured. So you'll notice down here that there are messages that say that this item was staged for deployment, but it was also propagated into sandboxes 2 and 3. We already have it in sandbox 1 because that's where the change was made, so there's no need to propagate it there. But now we know that all our developers got up-to-date sandboxes that reflect the latest version of the software. So the final step in the process, if we go back to here, we just moved it from in-test to staging by selecting the pass option. And the final step then is to deploy it to production. So we'll go down to the staging folder, and in there we have our item. So we can simply click on that and select deploy. So that completes that. And if we go back to where we were right at the beginning, which is the prod environment, then we'll be able to see that our changes have indeed been propagated through, and that change is now in production. It's live. So you'll see if we look at these other services that none of them have a support email address. And what I'd like to do now is make another small change to provide a default value for that support email. So what I'm going to do is go back to Deltanji, and go back to sandbox 1, and I will at this point initiate the change for to add a default. So the first thing we're going to do is make another change to the webhook service class. So here I'm going to do the checkout process not from within VS Code, but I'm going to do it from within Deltanji. So here we're saying that we want to add this, we want to branch this this component, and we want to make the branch in sandbox 1. And I'll add a new ticket, and here we get a form where we can say something like add default value for support email, something like that. So that creates that ticket, and we'll commit that, and you'll see that it's changed to green to indicate that it's branched and is editable within this sandbox location. So now we go back to VS Code, and we'll open up this item again, and what we're going to do is add a default value by setting an initial expression on this property. And this is a slightly more complex initial expression than the one above. What we're going to have in here is a $get of a setting in a global. So that is going to get the default value from this particular global node. And in order to make that work, we're obviously going to have to set a value for that global node. So let's do that now. So I'm going to switch over to a terminal session, which just happen to have here. This is my sandbox, and this is the dev namespace in that sandbox. So I can simply type set up arrow setting subscript telegram, comma, support email equals support at telegram.org. So by default, that will be the support email address for users of those services. Let's go and test if that is going to work. So we go into our development sandbox production and click on one of these guys, and sure enough, there's the default value that we just set up, support at telegram.org. So with that, we're happy with our changes. We can, well, first of all, we can go back to Studio and we can check in the change from here. And that has committed the change and queued it up for testing. But we haven't yet put this global node under source control. And if we don't do that, then this value will not get propagated through to production. But we want that to happen. So let's add that to source control. And the way we do that is by going into Deltanji and locating that global node, which is in a global called settings. And it was under the Telegram tree and under there. And for some reason, I don't see it.
You were setting.
Singular, okay. Let's try that. There we are. So there's the Telegram tree and there's the support email. So we can register that, or we can just go ahead and commit it, and that will add it to source control. And that's that change request there, and we want to tick that box, and that should do it. So now that global node is under source control and it's linked to the same change as the class that we changed. So if we look in our ready for testing sandbox now, both items belong to this ticket and both items have been checked in. So we're good to go with this. So it's the same procedure as we saw earlier. We're in ready for testing. So we can promote it to test. Then we can go and check in our test system to verify that the changes have taken effect. And indeed, we see that we now have the default email address appearing in there. So it's a rather cursory test, but I'm happy with the change. And so now we go down into our in-test folder, pass the test. That propagates the change to all of the other sandboxes and then queues it up into our staging directory, which is here. So our change is now in the staging, and the final step then is just to deploy it to production. So we go down to stage for deployment, select our items, click on this, click deploy. and that's the job done. And just for final confirmation, we can go into our live system, and sure enough, we have the support email field populated. So that's so just to summarize, that's the end of my demo. What we've done is we used VS Code to make some changes to a class. We used the production portal to make some changes to a configuration item within the production, and we used the Deltanji portal to register a node in a global as being under source control. And then with all of those changes, we deployed them through our workflow, transferring them into the ready for testing queue, then deployed them into the test environment, and then passed them, which pushed them to the staging environment, and then finally we deployed them into production. So that's following the whole workflow through from beginning to end. So that completes my demo. Are there any questions?
We had one question in the chat, which was from Iftikhar, just asking, this was at the beginning of the demo, asking about how the tool assists in the rollout of changes from test and production. So I don't know if there's anything you want to expand on that other than what you've shown.
Sorry, can you just clarify what the question was? How do you roll out changes from test and production?
Yeah, does the tool assist in the rollout of changes to test and then production?
Oh, to test and production. Yes, I think probably the demo covered that quite clearly, that we go from the repository through the workflow to all the way through test, and then into staging, and then into production. And of course, that can be configured to match exactly whatever your existing procedures are. If you've got multiple test environments, or if you deploy directly to production without a staging, or if you want to schedule deployments to happen at certain times during the night or something, all of that can be configured. Were there any other questions? Are there any more questions?
You can pop them in the chat here. So we've got one from Reg. What if two programmers need to work on the same class? How is that handled?
Normally, you would have a separate sandbox for each developer if they're working on things that conflict, and that's why we have multiple sandboxes in this setup. There's often a scenario though where multiple developers will work as a team within a single sandbox. That's quite a common setup, and so in that situation where two developers want to work on the same thing at the same time, you can implement a shelving workflow that allows you to move or shelve an item while another piece of while a different change is made to the same item. If somebody's working on a long-term project and an urgent bug fix is needed, then developer one can shelve their work momentarily while the urgent bug fix is pushed through. So there's 2 or 3 different ways of arranging for this to happen, but the most common are to either use multiple sandboxes or to use the shelving pattern in the workflow. The other scenario is that 2 developers want to work on 2 different branches, but the branches don't conflict. They're branches that are on different parts of the system, and so those 2 changes can occur simultaneously within the same the same sandbox. And that's quite a common pattern, and something that Deltanji supports out of the box is the ability to have multiple branches within a single sandbox.
Great. Okay, so Kevin has asked DTL and routing editors in both MP and VS Code.
Sorry, Laurel, you broke up there. I didn't.
DTL and routing editors in both MP and VS Code.
Yes. Tick all those boxes. Deltanji is integrated with the management portal for both DTL and rules and lookup tables and all those kind of things. So yes.
And then Irene, is Sam calling in, or should I don't know how to make that functionality work. But his question was, does this work only with GitHub, or can I use Azure and DevOps? Azure DevOps.
I think I don't know if Azure DevOps will integrate with Git. Essentially, the GitHub is an upstream repository that is fed from a local Git instance. So, John, you were about to chip in on this. Do you know something about this?
I don't. I mean, the logistics of saying your Deltanji is pushing to Git and then performing something to send it to something out there on the cloud. There's that can operate with any provider of Git style hosting. So it doesn't have to be GitHub. Azure DevOps under the covers is that I'm not familiar enough with what they use in the way of source control, but if essentially it's an instance of Git in the cloud, then it should be feasible to do that.
Yeah, actually, I think GitHub is owned by Microsoft these days, isn't it?
It is, yes.
So I'd imagine that somewhere inside Azure is an instance of GitHub. So the answer is almost certainly yes.
And then Anthony asks if it's possible to get a copy of the demo video so we can present to other devs. And yes, that is possible. I believe the InterSystems team are recording this, so we'll get that sent out to you afterwards. And also our contact details will be at the end of the presentation, so we'll be very happy to arrange a demo directly with your team as well, if you'd like. Is there anything else? You use VS Code. Can it also be used with Studio as well?
Yes.
If the product is enabled at the InterSystems instance level, will it restrict server-side editing?
You can configure whether or not you want to restrict editing and only allow edits for items that are under source control and checked out, or you can set it so that you can edit things that are not under source control. So that's your choice.
Are settings managed in their own structure or in the system default settings class?
System default settings is where the settings are controlled.
In the specific example George showed, he was putting for the webhook service for France, I think it was. Was saying this is the value that we want in both dev, test, staging, and prod. But in other scenarios where you want different settings at the different levels, then we would teach you how to make use of InterSystems system default settings and not have those propagating from one environment to the next because they are environment specific. It is possible to version those if you want to, but most sites are content with propagating the values that they want to have moving across all environments using source control for that.
Yes, generally the values in system default settings will be different between each environment, so you don't want source control to overwrite those. You want to be able to manage those directly in each environment. But yes, Deltanji does play nicely and work nicely with system default settings if you're using those.
And then another question, how easy is it to roll back changes in prod?
Yeah, when items are deployed into production, and I didn't show it in this workflow, but you can configure a rollback location or a backup location which takes an exact copy of the items that are being displaced in production, and then you can roll back from those. So even in the situation where there's been some uncontrolled ad hoc patching of items in production, which of course should never happen, but in practice can happen, then if there's a problem, you can roll it back and be sure you get back to the exact situation that you were before the change was deployed.
Sam, I don't know if you're still typing your question, but there is the request live call-in button that I think is at the bottom of your screen. So if you want to do that to call in. Oh no, you've just finished writing. The question is, we have the sandbox with multiple instances like UCR, router, edge running in one physical server, but in stage and prod we have multiple physical servers running UCR, edge, etc. How easy to configure from one repository to instances?
Yeah, each item that's under source control can be labeled with the system that it belongs to, and that system can then be then each location can be flagged to indicate which items belong in that location, and that way Deltanji can handle multiple namespaces across multiple systems.
And I think also what Sam's driving at is maybe that in the situation where you're saying we want to put this live, you actually want to put it to live 1, live 2, live 3, and live 4, because you have multiple instances for resilience and for workload management. And it's very common for large Deltanji configurations to make use of what we call auto forwarding, where developer says this can go live. Deltanji says, oh, well, that means I need to send it to Hong Kong, and I need to send it to San Diego, and I need to send it to Brussels. So we do, I'm thinking of one particular site where go live means deploy it to 6 or 7 different production servers in different parts of the globe.
Sam, thanks. Any other questions? Oh, here we go, one more. Does it stop the running production or the component when deploying changes to prod? Is that configurable?
It uses the standard production deploy mechanism. So it creates a deploy package, which is then deployed by the production. So I think that internally will stop the services that it needs to stop in order to deploy the items. So it's it minimizes the amount of disruption to the production while it's being deployed. I don't think there's any particular control over that process that's provided by InterSystems. But I think they have fine-tuned that to do the right thing for most scenarios.
Sam just asked, can we request a demo to show several team members? And yes, absolutely, we'd be very happy to do that. I've popped my email address in the chat, laurelj@georgejames.com, and it's also on the last slide, so you'll see it again. But yes, no, we'd be very happy to do another demo.
Yeah, we'd be delighted to demo to your organisation anybody who's wanting to see this again or see more detail. We'd be very happy to do that.
Any other questions? Very nice. I'm looking forward to talk to you soon. Sam, and you. Give it a couple. Anyone else?
Yeah, we have another 10 minutes or so. So folks, feel free to jump in with any questions and whatnot. I wanted to jump in and just reappear and say thank you to the George James software team. This was really awesome and amazing. You read my mind. For folks who are not aware of our conference, Ready is a little early this year. It's earlier than it has been, but you can get to see these folks live and in person, not just faces on a screen. That's the 27th through the 30th of April. I unfortunately will not be there, but I cannot recommend it enough. And then lastly, I just wanted to plug, this is a community webinar as part of our Global Masters program. If you are interested, your organization is interested in something like this, trying to show off the awesome work that you've been doing, join our Global Masters program, and you can work with us. The developer relations team at InterSystems will help you with promotion and coordination and various other aspects, so you can focus on just kind of the cool stuff. Yeah, so that's my plug here. Feel free to jump on with any other questions if you still have any, and then follow up with the George James team or with us in the community. And then this has all been recorded as well, so we can make sure that this specific demo is available, a specific webinar is available. And then the George James team can also follow up with other demos and contacts. Thank you, Laurel, John, George. This was awesome. I had a really good time getting to see Deltanji. Any other closing thoughts or last questions from anybody?
We'll stay online for a few more minutes just in case people are still pondering about a question they want to ask.
Yeah. But yeah, otherwise we will be at the Ready conference. If anyone is there, please stop by. We've got a stand in the partner pavilion, so it'd be really nice to meet some of the people who are on the call because we can't see who's on the call. So it would be really nice to know if you came and saw our demo. Yeah, and thank you so much for everyone's time. We really appreciate it, and thank you for the InterSystems team for hosting us. It's been great.
Awesome. Thanks all. We'll cut the recording pretty soon, but feel free to stay on and ask the team any questions and whatnot. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Derek. Thank you, Ari.